Hello students, welcome back to your virtual biology lesson brought to you by IOTA Virtual Learning. In our last lesson, we looked at the nervous system. We focused on the central nervous system where we unraveled the structure of the brain and the spinal cord and also their functions. So in this lesson, we are going to be looking at the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system. So what are you going to be learning in this? At the end of this lesson, you should be able to distinguish between the functions of the somatic and the autonomous nervous system. You should be able to distinguish between the functions of sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. You should be able to describe and draw a typical neuron or nerve cell. You should be able to distinguish between afferent, efferent, and intermediate neuron. Have you ever wondered how your heart keeps beating or your stomach keeps working even when you are asleep, or even your lungs keep on breathing even while you are asleep? That is the body's behind the scenes superhero, that is the autonomic nervous system. Come along as we discover how messages zooms around the body faster than a text message. Alright, let's get started with this. The peripheral nervous system, PNS, include all nerves outside the brain and the spinal cord. These are the sensory nerves which leads from every part of our body to the central nervous system, and also the motor nerves which are running from the central nervous system to all parts of the body. The peripheral nervous system signals the changes in the environment that are registered by the receptors to the central nervous system, which integrates information it receives and sends appropriate messages to the receptor accordingly. As an illustration, when you touch a flame, the thermoreceptors of your fingers pick up a stimulus and send this to the central nervous system. The central nervous system in turn sends a reply through the motor neurons back to the muscles of your hand so that you withdraw your hand from the hot flame. Now let's take a look at the types of nerves in the peripheral nervous system. There are two types of peripheral nerves. These are the spinal nerves and the cranial nerves. As the name suggests, the spinal nerves are the nerves which are connected to the spinal cord. The spinal nerves serve as the receptors and effectors in other body parts. That is, they receive impulses and also transmit responses to the parts involved. The cranial nerves, as the name implies, consist of nerves which are connected to the brain. The cranial nerves are associated mainly with receptors and effectors in the head region. The peripheral nervous system is subdivided into two. These are the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. Let's look at this one after the other. Somatic nervous system. The somatic nervous system controls activities which are mainly voluntary. It deals mainly with external stimuli and their responses. It controls responses that we think about before we perform, such as running, jumping, and other activities that are voluntary. Now, the somatic nervous system is made up of 12 pairs of cranial nerves in the head and 31 pairs of spinal nerves in the body of man. Of the cranial nerves, the optic and the olfactory nerves consist of sensory fibers, while the remaining 10 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves contain both sensory and motor nerve fibers, which conduct impulses from sense receptors to the spinal cord or the brain from their effectors. The autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system, ANS, is concerned with the control of the body's involuntary activities. For example, heartbeat, breathing, digestion, and secretion of sweat. The system consists of sensory and motor nerves which connect the brain or the spinal cord to the internal organs such as the heart, the liver, and the alimentary canal. Now, the differences between the somatic and the autonomic nervous system. In somatic nervous system, impulses speed along motor fibers that extend from central nervous system to effectors without a snap or without a ganglia. However, in autonomic nervous system, impulses speed along motor fibers that extend from central nervous system to where they snaps and from the ganglia to the effectors. Number 2, in somatic nervous system, the effect is on skeletal muscles, while in autonomic nervous system, its effect is on glands, cardiac muscles, and smooth muscles. 3. Somatic nervous system stimulates effectors, while autonomic nervous system may stimulate or even inhibit effectors. Number 4. In somatic nervous system, body activities are mainly voluntary, while in autonomic nervous system, activities are mainly involuntary. It will interest you to know that the autonomic nervous system is furtherly divided into 2 parts, mainly sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. These 2 systems work in contrast to each other. That is, their actions are antagonistic to each other. Let's look at these 2 systems in details. The sympathetic nervous system consists of nerves which connect the internal organs to the thoracic and the lumbar area of the spinal cord. The sympathetic nervous system stimulates many parts of the body for essential or necessary action in the time of danger. They are body responses to escape danger or to prepare for a particular situation. They respond to emergency situations in the body. During the process, an hormone called adrenaline, also called emergency hormone, are being released to control the body's action. Functions of the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system, 1, accelerates heartbeats. 2, constricts arteries. 3, it dilates the bronchioles. 4, it dilates the iris. 5, it contracts bladder and anal sphincter. 6, it causes relaxation of bladder. 7, it slows gut movements. 8, it raises the blood pressure. And 9, it inhibits the secretion of the salivary gland. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system consists of nerves connected to the internal organs, connecting the internal organs to the 10th cranial nerves and the sacral region of the spinal cord. This system stimulates the same organs as the sympathetic nervous system. However, their actions are antagonistic to the sympathetic nervous system. It often acts to return the body to the normal state after the situation or emergency has passed. Now let's try an exercise here. I have listed the functions of sympathetic nervous system earlier, and like I said, the parasympathetic nervous system is antagonistic to the sympathetic nervous system. That is, the reverse of all the actions in the sympathetic nervous system take place by the parasympathetic nervous system. So get a paper and write out all the reverse actions of the sympathetic nervous system. That is, write the opposite action of all the function of the sympathetic nervous system. And we'll be back after some seconds to review what you have written and see if it correlates with what we have. All right, let's take a look and compare what you have written down with what we have. Now, the functions of parasympathetic nervous system include: it slows down heartbeat, it dilates arteries, it constricts the bronchioles, it constricts the iris, it relaxes the bladder and anal sphincter, it causes the contraction of the bladder muscles, it speeds up gut movement, it lowers the blood pressure, and it stimulates the secretion of the salivary gland. If you are able to get at least 5 of these functions correctly, give yourself a thumbs up. You have done brilliantly. Let us move further in this study. Now, the main functional parts of the central and the peripheral nervous system is the nerves or the neurons. So we are going to look at the structure of the neurons and the different types of neurons that we have. So what are nerve cells or neurons? The nerve cell or neuron is defined as the basic unit of the nervous system, which is responsible for the transmission of impulses within the body. The neuron is the structural and functional unit of the nervous system. They are found in the brain, the spinal cord, or the nerve fibers of animals, and they are responsible for receiving and transmitting impulses. Let's take a look at the structure of the neuron. Now, a typical neuron or nerve cell consists of 3 major parts, which include the cell body, the dendrites, and the axon. Some neurons have dendron also. Let's look at these parts one after the other. The cell body. The cell body consists of the nucleus and the cytoplasm. It is the part that controls every other function of the neuron. The dendrites. The dendrites are short cytoplasmic filaments which conduct impulses towards the cell body. The axon. The axon is made up of a single long fiber which transmits impulses away from the cell body. Each axon is enclosed within a fatty myelin sheath which acts as an insulator, and an outer layer of neurolemma. The myelin sheath, which is formed by the Squeezman cell, is interrupted at interval by constriction called the nodes of Ranvier. The myelin sheath not only insulates the axons but also speed up the transmission of impulses. The dendron. A dendron is a long fiber which transmits impulses towards the cell body. The synapses. Neurons are joined end to end in a special way to form a nerve. The axon of one neuron forms a junction with the dendrite of the next one. Where the two nerves meet is a nerve junction called synapses. At a synapse, the motor end, that is the plate of the axon, intermesh with the dendrite of the following neuron. Nerve cells are classified according to their function into three, and these include the sensory or afferent neuron, the motor or efferent neuron, and the intermediate or association neuron. Let's look at this one after the other. Sensory or afferent neuron. The sensory or afferent neuron transmits impulses from the cell or receptor towards the central nervous system, that is the brain and the spinal cord. The dendrites of these neurons are connected to the sensory cells, while the axon is connected to other neurons. Motor or efferent neurons are specialized cells that transmit impulses from the central nervous system, that is the brain and the spinal cord, to the skeletal muscles, enabling movement. They are specialized for voluntary and involuntary actions like walking, talking, and heartbeat. Motor neurons are classified as either upper or lower motor neurons, each playing a distinct role in the movement process. The key functions of motor neurons is that they receive signals from the brain and spinal cord and transmit them to the muscles fiber, causing them to contract. The dendrites are connected to the intermediate neuron, while the axon is connected to an effector. The intermediate neuron, also known as interneuron or associate neuron, are specialized nerve cells found exclusively in the central nervous system within the brain and the spinal cord. They act as a connecting link between sensory neurons, which transmit signals from the body's senses, and the motor neurons, which send signals to the muscles and glands. Essentially, they process information and relay signals within the central nervous system, facilitating complex reflexes and behavior. They act as a bridge between sensory and motor neurons, transmitting signals and coordinating responses. So let's take a look at what we have learned so far in this lesson. We have learned that the peripheral nervous system includes all nerves outside the central nervous system. And the peripheral nervous system is subdivided into somatic and autonomous nervous system. They receive nervous impulses from the body and also send responses back to the muscles, glands, and internal organs. Somatic nervous system deals with voluntary actions or activities, while autonomous nervous system deals with involuntary actions or activities. The autonomous nervous system is subdivided into sympathetic and parasympathetic system. While the sympathetic system prepares the body for action in time of emergencies, that is, the fight or flight responses, the parasympathetic nervous system returns the body to normal state after emergency is past. Therefore, their actions are opposite or antagonistic to each other. We also learned in this lesson that neurons are the basic functional units of the nervous system that help to receive and transmit impulses and response. A typical neuron consists of the cell body, the axon, and the dendrite. The axon is insulated by myelin sheath, which is interrupted at intervals by the nodes of Ranvier. We further learned that neurons are classified into sensory or afferent neuron, motor or efferent neuron, and intermediate or interneuron. Sensory neurons receive impulses from the body and send these to the central nervous system. Motor neuron relay messages back from the central nervous system, that is the brain and the spinal cord, to effector muscles, glands, and internal organs. While the intermediate neuron acts as the connecting link between the sensory and the motor neuron, facilitating complex reflexes and behaviors. Alright, it's quiz time. As we normally do, let us test our knowledge on what we have learned so far in this lesson by reviewing past related WAEC questions and other questions from other external examination. The first question we'll look at is from way back 1990, and it says, which of the following is a component of the peripheral nervous system? Which of the following is a component of the peripheral nervous system? A. Brain. B. Spinal cord. C. Nerves outside the brain and spinal cord. And D. Cerebellum. Look at the options critically and pick your answer. The correct option is option C, nerves outside the brain and the spinal cord. Option A is wrong because the brain is part of the central nervous system. Option B is also wrong for the same reason. And option D is also wrong because the cerebellum is part of the brain, which is part of the central nervous system. This next question is from NECO 2002, and it says the autonomic nervous system comprises of A, the brain and the spinal cord, B, the brain and the nerves, C, dendrites and axon, D, sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. What do you think is the answer to this question? The correct option is option D, sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Option A is wrong because the brain and the spinal cord is part of the central nervous system. Option B is also wrong because the brain is part of the central nervous system, even though the nerves is part of the autonomic nervous system. Option C is also wrong because dendrites and axons are not the only part of the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is subdivided into two, which include sympathetic and parasympathetic system. The next question is from IGCSE paper 4, and it says, which of the nervous system connects receptors to the central nervous system? Which part of the nervous system connects receptors to the central nervous system? A, brain, B, spinal cord, C, sensory neurons, and D, motor neurons. What do you think is the answer? The correct option is option C, sensory neurons. The sensory neurons are attached to our sense organs like the skin, the ear, the eyes, the nostrils, and the tongue, and they receive impulses and send these to the central nervous system. The next question is from WAEC 2019, question 14, and it says, How many pairs of spinal nerves are present in the human peripheral nervous system? How many pairs of spinal nerves are present in human peripheral nervous system? A. 12, B. 21, C. 31, D. 14. How many pairs do you think there are? The correct option is option C, 31. The spinal nerves consist of 31 pairs of nerves. Option A is wrong because it is the cranial nerves that consist of 12 pairs. Option D is wrong, so also is option B wrong. The next question is from WAEC. And it says, which of the following is a function of the sympathetic nervous system? Which of the following is a function of the sympathetic nervous system? A. Stimulates digestion. B. Slows heart rate. C. Fight or flight response. And D. Promotes energy storage. Look at this functions critically and pick the one that is performed by the sympathetic nervous system. The correct option is option C, flight or fight responses. Remember, we said the sympathetic nervous system prepares the body for necessary action in time of emergency. It signals whether you should react or fight or take an escape route to a particular situation. Now, the other options, option A, option B, and option D are wrong because they are the function of the parasympathetic nervous system. The next question is from WAEC GCE, and it says, the part labeled Roman figure 4 in the diagram is, A. Dendrite, B. Axon, C. Cytoplasm, and D. Nucleus. Study the diagram and pick your answer. The correct option is option B, the axon. If we look at the diagram critically, you see that the Roman figure 4 labeled part is the part leading from the cell body, leading from the cytoplasm of the cell body. And that part is the axon, is the part called axon. Option A is wrong, because dendrite is labeled Roman figure 1 in the diagram. Option C is wrong because cytoplasm is labeled Roman figure 2 in the diagram. And option D is also wrong because the nucleus is labeled Roman figure 3 in the diagram. The question that follows this diagram again says, what is the function of the part labeled Roman figure 1? What is the function of the part labeled Roman figure 1? A. Receive sensory impulses from the body. B. Send impulses to the central nervous system, CNS. C. Insulates the axons. And D. Relays messages back from the CNS. Look at the part labeled Roman figure 1 and pick your answer. The correct option is option A, receive sensory impulses from the body. Now, the part labeled Roman figure 1, as I said in the earlier question, is the dendrites. The dendrites are attached to sensory organs and they receive impulses from the body and send this to the central nervous system. This next question was drafted by me, and it says the point where the axons of a neuron meet with the dendrite of another neuron is called. The point where the axon of a neuron meets with the dendrite of another neuron is called A. Joint, B. Synapse, C. Dendron, and D. Node of Ranvier. What do you think the part is called? The correct option is option B, synapse. So the point where a nerve meets with the dendrite of another nerve is called synapses. Now option A is wrong because it is where two bones meet are called joints, not where two nerves meet. Option C is wrong. Dendron is not the part where two nerves meet. Why option D is also wrong? Because node of Ranvier is the interval interruption of the myelin sheath. That's all the questions we can take in this round of our quiz. Do well to look for more questions from the past exams to test your knowledge on peripheral nervous system. Till I come your way next time, I remain your virtual biology tutor, Mr. Kehinde Adesina, and this lesson is brought to you courtesy of IOTA Virtual Learning. See you next time. Bye.